Hello, seventh grade. I don't know if I already said it once. I mean, I did already say it once, but I don't know if it was recording or not. But I'm back. As you can see, I figured it out. A different software. We're using Screencastify now instead of Loom. You don't care, but I had to suck it up and just buy this. So I look a little different. My head's in a box, and instead of in a little circle, I shaved off about 3 feet of beard too, but you probably noticed that already. So a few things before we get started. Make sure that you're writing these down by hand. I send you every day that we do this, the whole section of notes. All you got to do is copy those down. Don't print them out and give them back to me. That's just wasteful. I can print them out myself. Most of you that turned your notebooks in for the first quarter a couple weeks ago, you did a really good job with those. So thank you. Some of you are back at school, so you're not even seeing this, but those of you that are still at home, make sure you are writing these down. We will collect notebooks again the week before Christmas break in December. So I'll let you know as we get closer what days I'm going to start taking those. But I'll give you options again, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday again, like I did last time. So that way you don't have to have a certain day just after we get finished with chapters 4, 5, and 6, which is what should be in your second notebook. And again, these are a 100 point grade. And it's an easy grade. All you can do is copy your notes down. We always say in social studies, LOL, not laugh out loud, and not lots of love like my grandma thinks it means, which she makes really inappropriate Facebook messages because of that. She's like, "Oh, I heard your son has the flu." LOL. I'm like, "Oh, that's pretty rude, mamaw." And not the little dolls that my daughter plays with the circle, the ball that you have to unbox like 55 layers of trash, LOL dolls. But the actual social studies meaning for us means legible, meaning I can read it, organized, meaning they're in order. You should already have chapter 4, section 1 written down. You could be behind because you didn't have your notebook yet, but that's okay. You can get that down today. And then 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4. And the second L means labeled. You should have at least chapter, there we go. This is also mirrored, so everything looks opposite. Chapter 4, section 2. You don't necessarily have to have the title, but if you do, that's fine also. Your test study guide questions I sent home yesterday. Some of you have already got those done. I appreciate that, but you do not have to have those done yet. Those are due the day of the test. I go through and grade those the day of the test. However, I make them due the day that I send them out on Google Classroom, even though they're not technically due, just because I would not recommend you letting them pile up and trying to do all 4 of them the night before the test. Again, if you do that, I said do. If you do that, there's not really any way for me to know other than the little email I get. But I would, like I said, I'd rather you, for your sake, stay on top of it and not try to do all 4 the night before the test, because that's going to be too much for. I mean, maybe you can handle it, but it's not. It's more work than you need. So we're talking about the colonies, and like I would have said last time if we were making a video, this is more of we're getting closer to the American part of American history, the parts that you will recognize as American history, the colonists, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and the Boston Tea Party and the British Redcoats and all that stuff that is going to make America actually into the United States of America is we're getting into pretty soon. And so, of course, we started before with Native Americans and conquistadors and all that good stuff. Well, not always good stuff, but stuff anyway. And, that's part of it. If you're going to talk about the history of how the pizza you ate on Saturday night was made, you have to start with, wheat and water and flour and whatever, dairy processing the cheese. You can't just say, oh, put the pizza in the oven and that came out of data. That's not the whole story. You have to talk about the ingredients that go into something if you're going to tell the whole story. So we've been talking about the ingredients that go into what we're going to get into, which is chapters 4, 5, and 6. We're leading up to the Revolutionary War. Then after chapter 6, it'll be next year, and we will start our Constitution test, which is a whole thing. You got to pass them to pass junior high, and it's going to take a long time. They're big, hard tests, but that's going to be in like February, March, maybe the end of January. So let's not worry about that. But we will go over and 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 over so many of those things so many times that you will know the Constitution inside and out. So England saw the colonies as nothing more. We weren't really considered as citizens as really anything of interest to them at all. We were basically just considered a resource. Uh, the 13 colonies to England were nothing more than an ATM, basically a way for them to make money. Okay, and like I said to the people here, but I couldn't make a video on Monday. We've got a lot of natural resources. Resources, this is going to sound stupid. Natural resources are stuff that you use to make stuff. Uh, Stuff that occurs in nature, natural, of course, that you use to make things. A tree is a natural resource. We can make bed frames, chairs, pencils, paper, golf tees, even things that aren't important, all from trees. And so you're not going to be walking down the street and see a field of pencils. Oh, I'm going to go pick a fresh pencil. Those don't exist in nature. Those are not natural resources. You have to manufacture those using natural resources like tree and graphite, which is what the lead of a pencil is made of. It's not actually lead, or else we'd be vomiting all the time because we have lead poisoning. But that's another story. Yeah, you're not going to see a chair tree. Like I'm going to pick a fresh chair off the tree. You've got to, use the wood from the natural, or the, whatever it's coal underneath the ground, or whether that's food, an apple that you could eat. Those are all natural resources. Cotton to make clothes, indigo to dye those clothes, rice to eat, tobacco was a big thing back then. These are all natural resources, and England sees the natural. I'm going to move my head over here. England sees the natural. Oh man, that's really even trippier. Anyway, England sees the natural resources in America as just a way for England to enrich itself. Remember, from the chapters 2 and 3, the dominant theory of Earth at this point, of the civilized countries of Earth, is called mercantilism, which is basically the idea that your country is better the more money it has. Okay, in other words, if you're richer, you're the better country. Most people don't subscribe to that theory nowadays. We think of things like quality of life, healthcare, uh, income taxes, crime rates, and stuff like that. Education system. How long is your social studies teacher's beard and stuff like that, when you're considering how good a country is, not necessarily just how much money. Now, how much money you have is a consideration still, but it's just not everything. And so here you could see that mercantilism, the amount of power a country has, is based on how much money it makes. And so England's entire goal, and I say England because England is the country that is controlling what we now call the United States now. Okay, the reason you know that is because you can understand my words. We're speaking English, but England is certainly not the only country that is in this situation. France and Spain and Portugal all have areas in North and South America also, and so this isn't just a specifically English problem. But England is just the one that relates to our nation the most. Okay, and so we are really nothing more than a way to make money. Uh, the idea that we want representation, we want freedom. It's not so much that England was really like, oh, I don't want them to have that. It was that they didn't want us to have that because they don't really care. It's just shut up and make us money was basically their whole theory. And so they gave us some rights and powers and representation. We talked about the House of Burgesses already in the last chapter. They let us do that because they were like, hey, if this will just keep them quiet and keep them working. And bringing in money, then let's just let them have that. And so imports are goods that you buy from foreign countries. Exports are goods that you manufacture and send out to foreign countries. Almost all, imports, you understand. Whatever article of clothing you're wearing right now, if you check the tag, I would be willing, I would say 90% sure that 90% of your clothes are going to be made somewhere else. I didn't check mine before class, but A lot of your clothes are going to be made in China, made in Indonesia, made in the Philippines. Cameroon's a popular one. Vietnam's a popular one. Mexico's a popular one. Okay, those are imports. Those are things that are made in other countries and then brought in to be sold in America. An export, like an exit, is the opposite. It's going out. Okay, and so that would be something like if I made a little doll out of clay or whatever and shipped it to my friend in Spain, that would be an export, even though he's not buying it. This is really for buying it, but that's things made in America and shipped out to other countries. And so the navigation acts are laws that England made to keep that money flow high. And this is really the first, I don't know what you would want to call it, but the first friction between England and the well, again, we weren't United States yet, but America. And so basically, if we grew whatever crop, tobacco is the most common. Rice is also common. We'll say rice because we don't, tobacco is not good for you. But let's say rice. If you grew rice, the whole idea of the free market society and capitalism is that if you make something, whether that's growing rice, or whether that's a little weird doll I just talked about on the last slide, whether it doesn't matter. If I own my own shoe company, if I want to start making Bats shoes and I want to start selling a pair of sneakers for $1,000 each, I can do that. Does not mean you have to buy them. In fact, you probably shouldn't buy a pair of shoes that cost $1,000 each. But that's the free market. That's the idea that you either have to make something that's better, or something that's more affordable, or something that has cultural value. In other words, a lot of advertising money is spent to make products seem cooler, so people will spend more money on that, even though they're of the same quality. Nike and Under Armour or whatever. But the idea is you could sell your product for the highest price that people will pay for it to make the most money. Well, so the idea is if you're going to grow rice and England is going to pay you 10 cents for a pound of rice or whatever, and it would be less than that back then, but you're saying 10 because if I try to talk too much math, I'll probably have a stroke on camera here because my brain, I had math class since 1998. So, but anyway, so if you are going to sell your rice and England wants to pay 10 cents a pound and Spain wants to buy your rice for 15 cents a pound, you should sell it to Spain. Well, England doesn't allow that. They basically say you're only allowed to sell your product to England. Not only that, but you have to use English ships and you have to pay taxes to ship your rice to us in England, who we're forcing you to sell us to at a lower price anyway. And so they're really, really handcuffing the colonists' earning value. And so this is pretty much, by definition, unfair. Okay, if I said, hey, you're going to start working in my shoe company and you're going to make shoes, but you can only sell them to me and I'm not going to pay you full price for them and you have to pay to get them on the semi to ship to me and then you have to pay for me to ship the money back, that's unfair, okay? That's more than double dipping. That's like triple dipping. And so the colonists are a little bit upset. They start smuggling. Smuggling is where you trade illegally with other nations. For instance, like I just said, selling that rice to Spain or France or whatever. And so, as you know, as a junior high-aged human, people really dislike being told what to do, right? If, your parents are like, hey, we're going out to dinner and, they have a neon light that says secret closet of mystery and like, hey, don't go in there. As soon as they're out there, you're like, oh, what's in there? You know what? If say, hey, you shouldn't date that girl or that boy. You're going to want to do it more, and that's how this is. As England is trying to tighten control on the Americas, America is feeling the pressure of that, and they're fighting against that, which is a very foundational aspect of America. The colonies are also huge. Governing, rulemaking, parenting even is easier the closer you are. They teach us that when we have to take education classes in school, although it's been 20 years for me now. But the closer you are to somebody, the more likely they are to listen to what you say. Think about it. If we had kids in these desks right here in front of me and we're taking a test and I'm standing right over watching them, they're very unlikely to cheat. But if I handed out the test and I'm like, hey, I'm going to walk out across the parking lot and grab something for my truck, and you can see me right out the window, I'll be back in like 7 minutes. Please don't cheat. They're going to, as soon as they see me outside, they're going to start, saying answers to each other. And that's not because you're good people or bad people. It's just human nature. The closer the governing or lawmaking body is to you, the more likely you are to follow the rules. And so England, as you may have realized, is pretty far away. And so the idea that they can really keep tight controls on us is difficult because if they, there's not like Twitter or DMs or Snapchat to send messages instantly to the redcoats over here. It takes weeks, if not months, to get messages to and from England. In the meantime, Americans are, of course, in person, and they can communicate much faster. Okay, there are 3 types of colonies. We already talked about these in previous chapters. Charter colonies. People were given charters of pieces of paper. Contracts is another word for that. Okay, the citizens elected their governor and the royal legislature. Connecticut and Rhode Island are the charter colonies. Then you have, of course, proprietary colonies, and they're owned by just an owner. Like if I own my shoe company from a couple of slides ago, I would be the proprietor of that company. And they can basically act any way they choose as a king or a queen, or, they didn't have to act like that. They could act, they were the owner. They could act in any way they wanted. And so they would usually choose the governance themselves in the upper house, or what we would usually call the Senate now. And the citizens would elect the lower house, which would be Delaware, Maryland, and Pennsylvania were the 3 proprietary colonies. Okay. Attendance question. Let's keep it simple again. We've done this before. The number last time was 44. So whoever was, I don't remember who was close. That was 2 weeks ago. But guess another number. But this number is between 500 and 600. Guess a number between 500 and 600. I've written it down on the back of this piece of paper. Closest gets a nothing, thumbs up. Or I'll probably forget even that. But this is just to let me know that you are actually participating in school, which is so I can count you here for attendance. And then the third time is royal colonies. And royal colonies, what it sounds like. King or queen runs the show. And as you can see, the kings and queens were not very interested in giving them much power. So over half of the colonies were royal colonies. They chose representatives because, again, they're not there themselves to actually be watching the day-to-day operations. Okay, voting rights, the idea of suffrage, which is different than suffering. Suffrage is the right to vote. Okay, we're going to talk a lot when we get the Constitution about women's suffrage in the 1919, the 19th Amendment. Okay, women's suffrage means women's right to vote. Okay, women's suffering is a different thing. That's what my wife agreed to when she married me. But only basically rich white people could vote. If you owned land and you were white and you were a male, could you vote? No women, no African Americans, no indentured servants. And you're really getting rid of the majority. I mean, just women off the top, that's already over half. Okay, men and women are not half and half. You're actually slightly more likely there are more women than men by a very slight amount. But all people of color, all indentured servants. And so that's still better than most of the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is usually one king or one queen. But still, we're removing, and this is going to be a common theme throughout American history. We're removing a lot of our population just out of sexism or racism. But that, that's not an American, it is an American problem, let's say, but it's not a uniquely American problem. Other countries obviously have had their own issues with those isms, racism, sexism, or whatever. Okay, so number between 500 and 600, put it in the Google form, the purple sheet that I make every morning to send home. The notes will be attached to this. Make sure you write this down by hand. Make sure you put chapter 4, section 2 at the top of a new page. and then each section to start on a new page, not each slide, each section. So Friday's note should have its own start at a new page and everything else. Okay. Make sure you're masking up when you go out, washing your hands and all that good stuff. Stay safe. Message me through Remind or through Google Classroom if you have any questions. If your parents want a conference with me next Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, the hours are on Remind, and there's a link to schedule a conference through my Google Calendar, and we'll do this on Google Meet face-to-face with my little webcam here, and they'll have the misfortune of having to see my floating head just like you do. So have a good rest of your whatever today, Wednesday? I don't know. They all blend together now. Again, most of you did a good job last 9 weeks, but let's get off on the right foot this 9 weeks. Stay on top of this now. Don't get all behind. Try to make it up in the last week, or just take zeros like a few of you did on the first 9 weeks, because you don't need those failing grades. Okay. Have a good day, and I'll see you later. Bye.